went to school here, 74 I graduated. And this is the first time I've had work here. That's pretty cool. Before this, I've never really worked in color. The last 20 years or so, I've been doing platinum palladium prints. But even longer than that, well, Tom and I have been together 35 years, and both of us have documented our relationship over that period of time. And but then mine had always been rendered as black and white images. So this is the first color, and it felt like a real departure. And then, of course, coincidentally, the COVID period started, so that's what I connected with. I would collect plant material on these walks and come back and I had never heard the term knolling, but Tom knew what that was, and he said, "That's what you're doing." And so I'd have these little rules each time, like these you can't touch. Once I put it down, I can't move it. Just little things like that would change, but it became a meditative practice, putting these things together. So that's another whole body of work, but it's definitely related to this. Remember, this was the first image. When I went to the park, that plant, there was a huge area that was covered with that. I'd never seen it before, and I was fascinated by it. And that's the first thing I took back and decided to photograph myself with. So, and I'm still not sure what it is. This is the first time we've seen it go through a bloom cycle, and then this stage of its development or its death is coming up, and we'll have to figure out which plant that actually turned out to be. But it reminded me of Corona, and we called it Corona turbulatum because it looks like it's circling around my head. So that's what started all this. It's mixed lighting. There's daylight and there's strobe, and there's kind of a sickly, sallow color to some of these, because I think there's a lot of normalcy about what we're living through, but there's a unknown edge to it also. And I grew up in Morganton, and I remember learning as a kid that it had been called Mimosa City back in, not formally, but that was a nickname for it, in the 30s, and they planted them all over town. They were there anyway, but it always fascinated me that there was this association with that tree, even though it didn't exist anymore. Oh, there was a blight, so it disappeared. And but anyway, I started collecting these, and they're an incredible bloom, but as it ages, it turns into something totally different, and each stage of it is fascinating. So I've done lots of knolling images of the plant. Sometimes I'll just leave them where they are and let them age right there, but sometimes I put them away and then work with it again. So I've got probably half dozen manifestations of that as it ages and gets more interesting. As far as our self-documentation, is that most of that's been unplanned over the years. Just some inspiration comes up or some situation we're in, I'll photograph. But this is the first time I really approached it as a project, looking at it as an aging process, just like our relationship has been a victim of that. And so I never thought these things, it was just interesting to collect these things and have no idea what they were going to turn into. So that part was unplanned, and that's what I'm still working on. And now that it's winter, most of the growth is gone. It's really in an interesting phase now. And then I'll see the beginnings again, or right before the beginnings of when the bloom starts and the whole cycle goes through. I had in mind a lot when I was working on this was two inspirations were Gregor Mendel, the geneticist, who that was inspired the idea of cloistering, because he was a science student, but failed his teaching exams, and I think he's Czech. He was Czech, and so he couldn't teach, and it was suggested to him that the only way to make a living, or support himself as a scientist, was to be in a monastery. And he went into the priesthood, did go to a monastery, became the abbot, which ended his research, because he'd been carrying that on public for, I don't know how long while he was there. But that was how he was able to pursue his interests and still be able to afford that that lifestyle. And and it was, he was dealing with peace specifically, but it was plant life. And then Auguste Sander, the Portuguese, was the other thing I thought about a lot. And both Tom and I are really drawn mostly toward French culture. That's where we travel, spend most of our time when we could travel. And both of those are Germanic or more Central European, which was interesting to me because I've never focused that much on that. But those two guides were important.